When danger is obvious, we tend to take precautions. If you are going onto a ship in raging seas, it's very likely that you're going to wear a life preserver. It's when we let our guard down that often the most dangerous circumstances unfold. And particularly, I might add, when we have been assured by these so-called experts that all is well. In July of 2007, Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke was asked about housing, and he said, quote, "Given the fundamental factors in place that should support the demand for housing, we believe the effect of troubles in the subprime sector will be limited." Those words were spoken at S&P 1500 just as the world was about to unravel financially. Following the herd into that morass of housing, and not just subprime, but housing in general, brought untold losses, both financial and emotional, to literally millions of homeowners and investors. Because as human beings, we are evolutionarily wired to seek safety in numbers. And while that made a lot of sense when we were in some jungle or some forest trying to escape from predators, that psyche, that ingrained predilection, is a serious problem when it comes to investing, because often we find not safety in numbers, but danger in numbers. I think the place the herd is gathering right now most dangerously is in China. And again, if you've watched the show, you've heard me talk, maybe talk too much about my positions on China. I will say, though, that China last year was an incredibly profitable trade for me. It's had a very good start to 2012, but China was among the worst performing stock markets in the world last year. And I believe we are in the very early innings of a massive unwind on China. This is the new South China Mall. It is in Dongguan. It is the largest mall in the world with over 2,300 stores. It is 99% empty. When it opened, the New York Times gushed, quote, "There is no end in sight. No evidence that China's long boom is likely to suffer anything more than a modest slowdown." Well, I stipulate that instead of no end in sight, there are no people in sight. Can you think of a truly significant company out of China who's not simply replicating something that's already done in the West? Or can you think of a product invention that was invented in China? We have seen this movie before. It was Japan in the 1980s. I think, unfortunately, we have too short of a memory on this. Japan in the 1980s, its ascendance then was no less assured to the American public than China's is today. All of the hindrances and impediments that I talk about on China, the United States has the exact opposite attributes, which I believe will allow us to succeed far into the future. What is striking to me is that America's share of global GDP has been amazingly steady at just above 25%. This tells me two things. Number one, that America is the primary driver and benefactor of global growth. Number two, it tells me that China and Asia are eating the lunch of Europe, as that chart depicts. What America has that no other industrial country has is that we are growing demographically. Our domestic birth rate at 2.1 is right at replacement, and it's the highest in the industrial world. You throw in a whole lot of immigration, and we are going to be growing far into the future. This is the country that broke the sound barrier. This is the country that split the atom. More recently, this is the country that created Google and Apple and Amazon. This is the country that is the leader in biotech and nanotechnology and some other fill-in-the-blank technology that I haven't even heard of yet. This is the world that America made. If you don't believe that America is going to continue to dominate that world, economically, politically, in every other way, culturally, then I think you're in for a very, very rough investing future. One reason I believe that the United States is going to continue to dominate the world in every way, but including as the best investment in the world, is because of the dominance of the United States military. Historically, the default reserve currency of the world has always gone to the country with the strongest military, and to particularly the country with the strongest navy. So while the dollar has been a much maligned asset in recent years, I believe that the dollar bottomed last year. I'm very long the United States dollar right now, and I think the United States dollar has many years ahead of it. We killed Osama bin Laden. I immediately started buying the United States dollar. which turned out to be a very fortuitous trade, maybe a bit lucky, but I don't think this is luck, and I don't think this is coincidence. If you can see the X on the bottom, May 2nd, that is the day Osama bin Laden was killed. 2 days later, we put in the low for the United States dollar for the rest of the year, all the way through the present. I believe that what SEAL Team 6 did was not only restore justice and the honor of the United States, but also reminded the investing world that the reserve currency does, in fact, default to the world's strongest military. And the United States pulled off an exercise that night, which no other country on earth could even fathom. I'm going to quote Ronald Reagan, a man who's also significant to this place, to Notre Dame. In his final speech as president, he told us, quote, "Whether we seek it or not, whether we like it or not, we Americans are the keepers of the miracles." And I think that is true economically and in every other way.